welcome back. Today I wanted to do a little get ready with me dedicated to Becca and talk about my thoughts and feels about the whole thing. If you haven't heard already, Becca announced on Wednesday that they were going out of business in September of 2021. It's sad. Unfortunately, we knew that this was going to happen at some point. I mean, not necessarily that Becca was going to go out of business, but that businesses, makeup brands and such like, would eventually go out of business due to pandemic, reduce of makeup sales. Just gonna adjust my clip a little bit, get more of that hair away from my face. There we go. We knew it would happen eventually. We couldn't just keep having launch after launch after launch, new brand after new brand, without something falling to the wayside, and it just happened to be Becca. We already saw the closure of Jordana, closed at the beginning of the year. So I'm just going in with the Becca Backlight Priming Filter, which is actually one of my all-time favourite primers ever. I've actually ordered a backup as soon as I heard they were closing. I ordered another one, so I have a backup of it. I haven't found a primer that comes close to it that has this sort of long wear, luminous, makes the foundation adhere. I just freaking adore it so much. So yeah, we heard that, okay, what's the foundation done? Next I'm going to go in with my Aqua Luminous Perfecting Foundation. Becca hasn't exactly had the plainest sailing. I remember when I first got into beauty YouTube back in 2009, 2010, Becca went out of business, I want to say about 3 or 4 times. People like Samantha Chapman and Nikki Chapman, Pixie Woo sisters, Pixie Woo, and that they always talked about Becca, and they loved their Shimmering Skin Perfector liquid, which was discontinued a while ago now. I didn't actually find that out until I went to order a few when I found out they were closing. But wow. But that's what got people interested in them. People liked the Shimmering Skin Perfector. They liked the beach tint that they did. It was like in a small squeezy tube, and it was a lip and cheek cream product, and it was beautiful. And I believe their cult shade was hibiscus or dragon fruit, something like that. And oh my goodness, it was such a cult favourite. Of course they had their pressed highlights. They also had cream highlights. But yeah, they did struggle at first, because at that point we were coming off of we were just plunging into a global recession. They weren't the only brands that were finding financing difficult at the time. I think another name that sticks out is Liz Earle, the cleansing polish brand. They were having problems around that time too. But Becca back in the day were all about this. Oh my goodness. Becca back in the day were all about this beachy Australian surfer chick vibe. That is what Becca did, and that's what Becca did well. That's what a lot of their products were geared towards. Like, take this foundation for example. It is very sheer, it is very glowy. I'm just going over it with a little bit extra in the places that I kind of need it. And it kind of, it was kind of representative in their shade range when it came to their complexion products as well. This is the Fair. I believe this was the lightest one they did in this foundation as well. But as you can maybe tell, it doesn't really suit me properly. It is not really, it's not light enough for me. And it's very yellowy undertone, very tan. So a lot of their products were geared towards that aesthetic, that vibe. But they're highlights. Guys, they're highlights. But there was a few people have already raised some really good points for the downfall of Becca. And why they wouldn't be making as many sales now as they would be back in the day, obviously. First of all is there are only so many highlights you can own. Mostly everyone who wanted to own a Becca highlight probably already owns it by now. I mean, sure, you will have the people outside of the beauty space, outside of our beauty community, who just use makeup regularly. They may go through a Becca highlight a lot faster than the average member of the beauty community might. I have the minis of the Becca highlights. These are 2.4 grams. Full size have 8 grams in them. I have already panned one. I'm almost in the middle. I've almost finished panning 2 others. So going through one Becca highlight in a year isn't completely impossible, especially if it's your maybe one of maybe 3 or 4 other highlights that you own and you're using them all the time. So it may come as a bit of shock to more like brand loyal customers than to those of us in the beauty community. And also there's the argument that Becca haven't come out with innovative or exciting products. Well, they did come out with an innovative product. They came out with the no pigment foundation and the highlight. I didn't see it go down too well, but I get the concept behind it. It was all about the your skin but better vibe. It was interesting. It was innovative. It just wasn't what people were wanting. I think it might have been a bit too ahead of its time. And admittedly, when they are coming out with their face palettes, they weren't necessarily coming out with a big enough shade range to, what's the word I'm looking for? To satisfy the market, shall we say? Again, you also have to factor in these decisions could be made anything up to 2.5 years in advance. I'm going to go in with a concealer that is similar to the Hydroluminous Concealer because I've actually finished mine. This is the number 7 Hydroluminous Concealer. Nice concealer. Horrible packaging. And now that we know they were looking at the finances of the company and whether or not it was worth maintaining investment in, they may not have, particularly this latest palette that's about to release, they may not have seen it as a sound investment to broaden that colour range in a brand that they're about to close the lid on. I know it sucks that it's still such a small shade range in that face palette, but it is also a business. They had to make decisions, and yeah, that was the decision that was made. And then there's other things that have impacted Becca's revenues. For example, there was that disaster of a collaboration, well, semi-disaster of a collaboration with Jaclyn Hill with those eyeshadow palettes, and then Jaclyn made them destroy like a batch of them, batch of God knows how many hundreds of thousands of units. I'm going in with a golden hour powder just to set everything. But that alone would have been incredibly harmful to their revenues. I mean, as we're seeing with a lot of other like particularly retail companies, a lot of businesses aren't exactly sitting on a pot of money, you know. I mean, look at particularly here in the UK, you have your you have Debenhams, and then you had the oh god, what was the group called? The Arcadia Group. These are household, high street, legacy brand names. These things have been around for decades. Debenhams in particular, been around for over 100 years. And now they were almost gone because these companies aren't sitting on large pots of money. And now that we as consumers are a little bit more aware of other intricacies within the industry for things like components, different components, the more luxe you want your component to be, the more it's going to cost. Getting things shipped here, there, and everywhere. This particular product was made in the USA, so it's probably not going to have as many shipping as, say, I don't know, something that's made in China is probably going to cost a little less to manufacture this, depending on how much the component costs. And then you have paying stores for shelf space, for gondolas, for your kiosk, for them to stock it at their fulfillment centres, for your own personal warehouse, your website costs. And I know you may go to GoDaddy or whatever and be able to pick up a URL for 99p, but to renew things, like to renew things, depending on how much the web space costs in the first place, to renew your hosting package, depending on the traffic, goes up and up and up and up. These are so many overheads for just a brand. So many overheads. So these are things that are going to affect their revenues greatly, which might explain why there was a reluctance to branch out and stick to just core products, doing their primer, their highlights, their blushes, because they're beautiful products, they're safe, people love them, people repurchase them. But then there's another aspect that comes into play here that people, think particularly brands, might not have been too aware of or savvy about. And that is our increasing adoption of minimalism culture within the beauty community. For bronzer, I'm going to use the Revolution Pro Sculpting Bronzer in Bahia because it's the closest thing I have to the Becca Sunlit Bronzer. I had the Sunlit Bronzer in Bali Sands and it's currently frankened with another bronzer, but it's a beautiful, beautiful bronzer, and the Revolution Pro Sculpting Bronzer is a similar formula. Even kind of dupes the vibes with the packaging. So we're going to use this bronzer today. So as I was saying about our increasing adoption of minimalism culture, over more so since now I don't want to be appearing like I'm laying any blame here or anything, but it's been increasing ever so much since Hannah Willie's posting grew a following. But even before then, we had plenty of traction in the no buy, low buy sphere, beauty budgets, all that jazz. They are not a new concept. They've been around a long time, and in fact, I think the first person to make a huge deal of it was Christina. I forget her last name, or is it Christine? Her YouTube channel used to be called Pink So Foxy. I will link it in the info box, but she came up with the idea of Makeout 2013, and it was the idea of a year-long no buy, and and since then it's just kind of snowballing. More and more people are getting on it, and not just in the makeup community. People are, of course, you got your Marie Kondo, or the Kondo, I forget. But you know, what sparks joy, getting rid of clothing and other bits and bobs in your home that don't spark joy. And this, in turn, has an effect on the economy. As we know, particularly in the makeup industry, launches, product development are years in the making. I'm going to go in with Wild Honey. So the brands are creating product and releasing product at the rate of buy, trying to corner a part of the market. And there's another topic in here of, you know, you don't have to buy everything, and for a long time we were. But we created, as consumers, we created this overinflated false sense of demand. We did. So the brands are like, hey, we're cool, we'll do this, pumping out all this product. But then we as consumers, we stamped on the brakes and we said, no, okay, we're putting our purses away. But the makeup companies, they're still, they've already set the wheels in motion. They can't slow it down now. They've already got their components, they've already worked out the formulas, they've already booked their time in the lab to manufacture it. Do you know how many millions of dollars they would lose if they just stopped now? I know, hyperbolic, but you get what I mean. It takes a little bit of time for particularly larger established brands to catch up with the everyday consumer and the en masse consumer. Like when people, I often see this in the will I buy this videos, particularly in Jaclyn Night Fist, who asked for this type products. And often it's their core audience that will buy it, people that are loyal to the brand, who are outside the beauty community, that will buy whatever they pump out. For example, the Naked palette, which is a point that Kelly Gooch brought up. She had a friend who's more than excited for the latest Naked palette release because she just consumes makeup regularly. And most of the beauty space here on YouTube kind of gave it the side eye and were like, okay, on your way. I know people like that who, they own every makeup palette. They don't own makeup on the scale that I do. I'm just going over with a light wash of this product. This is the Blushed Copper. This used to be a Shimmering Spin Perfector highlight, but then they put it into the Luminous blush range. I just love it for a wash of like topper. It is a bit much. It would look amazing on dark skins. It's freaking gorgeous. But hey ho. And I'm going to go over the top with a bit of Champagne Pop. Because this is the original one, still called Champagne Pop. The newer ones are now just called C-Pop. So yeah, there's a big drastic shift and what's the word I'm looking for? Juxtaposition seems like a phrase I want to use, but I think it's too long-winded. But there's a huge conflict between the production of makeup and the consumption of makeup, the purchasing of it. And on top of that, we also have, particularly in areas of the cruelty-free beauty community, Becca is owned by Estee Lauder. A lot of people within factions of the cruelty-free community will not purchase anything owned by Estee Lauder because Estee Lauder sells in China. There are other factors that I've been aware of more recently that are that make people not want to purchase from Estee Lauder companies outside of the cruelty-free status, but I suggest that you go and Google it and find your own information and make your own decisions. So we already have an increasingly decreasing pool of customers for brands like Becca, just with those two factors. On top of that, we also have newer people coming into the beauty sphere. Your 15 to 25 range. So your 15 to 25 range that are new into makeup. They're not going to want to buy brands that their mum's buying. And even though Becca started as this new, young, hip, cool brand back in the early 2000s, I'm 32. I'm 32. I have kids. Becca's one of my favourite brands. It's like almost daily use. I could use something that belonged to Becca. It tarnishes a brand almost for younger makeup wearers when it's something that your mum wears. Like I remember when I was a teenager, like my mother didn't do it, but some mothers did, taking your daughter to the makeup counter and getting you matched up to like a Clinique or an Estee Lauder double wear or something. And you just kind of, a lot of the girls just poo-pooed it because it's like their mum's makeup. Ugh. The idea that it was luxury, prestige, often didn't register. It was just, it's their mother's, or their grandma would pass down things from like a gift with purchase or whatever. So Becca also, and other brands like Estee Lauder, Lancome, YSL, are competing for a younger market to broaden their market, but have to deal with that stigma of being their mother's makeup. I think that's why MAC was so massive, particularly for my generation at the start of beauty YouTube, because it was our prestige brand. Our mothers wouldn't buy MAC. Gosh, no, that would never happen. They were too busy buying their Bareminerals, you know? And then there is a final factor that has been decreasing their potential customer pool. And that is our rise in our intentional support of indie brands in particular. Even people who are on like a low buy or a beauty budget, when they do purchase makeup, they're more gearing their purchase towards these upcoming brands, which is great, it's grand. But I don't think these long established beauty houses, anticipated that, or anticipated the level at which our dedication as consumers might shift. For example, I know this is a a hard topic for a lot of people, or a topic of annoyance, but particularly the Shroud Cosmetic It's Bats palette. It oversold by, I've seen people posting order numbers in the 6,000s, if not higher. And that is a small indie brand. This person, I'm not sure the lady's name, but she's basically running a small setup, if not a one-woman show. And she posted a picture of her printing, her pressing machine, and she can only really press 9 shadows at a time. So I believe I read the total palette she can make in a week is 300. So for that many people to put their money into a brand as small and upcoming as that, a brand that can only produce 300 items a week, to then purchase over 6,000 of them, that is a huge pot of money taken from mainstream to, I don't want to say private hands, but you know what I mean. So yeah, that as well is a huge factor into contributing to the decreasing pool of people that would be purchasing from Becca. It really doesn't have a whole lot to do with innovation and exciting launches. For example, MAC doesn't really have a whole lot of innovative, exciting launches, but people still repurchase from them. People still purchase their MSF Naturals and the soft and gentle highlight or pro long wear concealer, or the foundation, or whatever it is, the core products. And that's what Becca was constructed of, was a bank of core products. Occasionally they would have like a celebrity collab with like Khloe Kardashian or Chrissy Teigen or whomever, and they'd have like a limited edition thing. But it was mostly about the core products. So the fact that they weren't, like shaking glitter in your face or doing a dance or whatever to get your attention is irrelevant, because other brands are in a similar situation, aren't releasing exciting, innovative products, and they're still functioning. It's all about customer base. I'm going to go in for my Jaclyn Hill palette because I kind of thought it was apt. For Jaclyn Hill's association with Becca, I'm just going to do a very, very simple look. I'm going to take in light. Okay, so I'm not going to list all the shades that I use in this palette because it will just take far too long and then I won't be talking. So even if people aren't purchasing from Estee Lauder, the brand, it doesn't really matter to the Estee Lauder company, because they're not going to shut down their name brand, are they? They still have Clinique making lots of money, particularly with our boost in skincare demands. More people going luxe and buying from Tom Ford. The mad rush on Too Faced palettes in the past 5 years was enough to bolster Estee Lauder companies, and when a brand like Becca are competing with revenue streams such as, the Peach collection, I don't know. For me, I think it might be a mistake on Estee Lauder's part to close down Becca, because for Estee Lauder, even though Becca wasn't like a prestige price range, like it wasn't even as high a price range as Estee Lauder is, it still had that affordable luxe quality to it. It was you know, if you wanted to purchase from like Sicily or Chantecaille, that was, sorry, my camera is just being so funky. It was almost like you could get a taste of these more luxurious brands at a more affordable price. I also know a lot of their products, oh golly, I also know a lot of their product was particularly popular in bridal circles, especially with the Backlight priming filter and the highlights. They were very popular in bridal makeup circles. But what will happen to those products? Will they be absorbed into the ELC and be redistributed amongst their companies? Will they keep those formulas and just repackage them under the Estee Lauder name and charge an extra £10 a bottle? Who knows? But the lesson here is, and myself included, if you love a brand and you love a product, buy their shit. Buy their stuff. Yes, we want to give more opportunity to new up-and-coming brands. But if that means, in my case, losing your holy grail foundation primer, losing some of your all-time favorite highlights, you gotta pick and choose. There's not, I don't want to say that there's not room at the table for everyone, but there isn't. There are not enough. The climate we have created has damaged some of the chairs at the table. As I said earlier, we as consumers created an overinflated sense of consumerism with the buy culture. I'd say it pretty much died around the 2015 mark. But before then, we had almost 10 years of people hauling like there was no tomorrow, myself included. Okay, this is a product you don't hear a lot of people talk about, the Pro Longwear paint pots. You'd hear everyone talk about the Tom Ford ones, the new Samantha Ravndal ones, the Charlotte Tilbury ones. Like, have we forgotten that MAC exists? But again, that does fall under the categories of MAC sells in China, is owned by Estee Lauder. And now for new people entering the world of consuming makeup, it's your mama's makeup, so you ain't gonna touch it, cause it's for old fuddy-duddy ladies. So how do you guys feel about Becca closing up towards the end of the year? I will miss them. I do hope there is some way to save them. If we do purchase from them, will that be enough to save them? Who knows? Will there be a buyer for the brand? Who knows? That may have been an avenue that they were looking at. But with the lack of sales in recent years, that may not have been a viable option. Because I know the company, they only purchased it for, I believe it was like 300 million in 2016. They're now about to fully own Decium, which is the parent company of The Ordinary. They also own Nyod, I believe. Or maybe not Nyod. I do know they own a couple of other semi-prestige skincare companies as well. Like The Ordinary is the budget version of all of their skincare brands. Oh. But yeah, they're about to purchase that for $2.2 billion, I believe the total sum was. Which is crazy. Bananas. And who do you think might be next? As I said, we sometimes think that these big companies are going to be too big to fail. Because they're owned by these big multinational parent companies, and they've been around for so long. I mean, Becca's been around for 20 years. We're used to companies maybe entering and leaving the market within a 5-year period, like CYO. They didn't last very long, unfortunately. I mean, people loved them, but I'm guessing there just wasn't money in it. Remember when Elf almost disappeared? I definitely think we will see more brands get into trouble, into financial trouble. I'm not necessarily sure whether or not there will be brands closing. But I think it's definitely going to change the brands that we purchase from. I mean, for example, like NYX has been around for a long time. I do believe NYX is owned by L'Oreal now. But at the same time, NYX is not doing so hot. Like, people are looking at NYX, seeing a product they kind of like, and then looking at the price tag and then jumping back 6 feet because that's not NYX price tags. Remember when you could pick up NYX eyeshadows for like $1.99 a piece, $2.99 a piece? Their blushes were like £4. Not anymore, they ain't. The foundation is like £17. And that is another thing. Because of the what am I trying to say? Because of the false bubble of potential custom that was created, and the brands stepped up to the table to meet this perceived ever increasing demand, they now have all this product that is sitting, going unpurchased. So they want to make their money back. And the best way to do that is to add an extra pound or two onto the price tag of your products, which in turn, we're not willing to pay. So this could end really badly, and we could see a lot of brands that we love just vanish. But we'll just have to hold on to our makeup brushes and find out, won't we? So that was my almost full face of Becca Cosmetics and all my thoughts and feels about the current situation. I mean, fingers crossed that people flocking to buy backups of their favourite Becca products. I'm guilty of that. I bought a few backups. But maybe that might be an incentive enough to Estee Lauder to reverse their decision. We can only hope and see. Sometimes people just need to be reminded that things exist before they disappear altogether. I will say I am quite disappointed that the Shimmering Skin Perfector liquid was discontinued a while ago, and I was oblivious to it, which just goes to show how little I was checking for Becca. But at the same time, I too was on the buy less bandwagon. So when I was purchasing makeup, I was going for new exciting things. So I'm just as guilty for the situation that's currently happening. I know this is all very hyperbolic. There are worse things that are happening in the world than a makeup brand going and closing its doors. I know, I totally understand, but just let me have my moment. I freaking love Becca, and to be honest, if I could get my hands on Becca, I'd be digging through their product archives and bringing back those beach tints and all kinds of glorious colours and shades and be, yeah, they those beach tints, if they had those beach tints now, everyone would be buying them because they're so the thing. So thank you guys for listening to me ramble on about my series, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.